Hi, everyone. Aaron Rubin here with Patrick Coddou. Did I get that right, Patrick?
You did? Yep.
Close enough. So Patrick owns a company called Supply. Supply makes razors and men's grooming products. Cool product. I have it. I use it. We're here to talk about e-commerce and how hard you really have to work to make it in this business. So Patrick, let's start with sort of how much time do you spend, and what are you spending your time on?
Yeah. So I don't spend crazy amounts of time on my business. I probably work around 50 hours a week on my business, which is a lot, but it's not. I'm not like 80 plus hours. And I spend so a little bit of context for people who don't know who we are. We're a bootstrap brand. We're kind of mid-high 7 figures. We're a very small team. My wife and I are the only full-time employees. In fact, technically, my wife's not a full-time employee. I have a lot of freelancers, contractors, and part-time employees. And one of we're 5 years old. So the challenge I have and kind of the transition I'm going through right now is trying to figure out what are the things I need to be doing to take myself out of the business and train other people. And what can I afford? Who can I afford? What kind of level of talent can I afford to train other people? So my challenge is not necessarily giving up that control, but being able to afford that control, being a bootstrap brand, because every penny counts when you're bootstrapped. So I don't know if that answers the question, but those are some of my first initial thoughts.
What are you thinking in terms of my first hire? What's that rule that you're I don't know if I can really afford it, but I want to get that person in?
I think so. Let me kind of reframe the question. I think less about what full-time hire do I need to make to fill in a specific hole in my business, and I think more about what are those holes and what does it take to solve that problem. So I'll give you a great example. Right now we have a lot of challenges on our inventory. Not a lot of challenges, but one of the things I spend a lot of time on is purchase orders, or I used to. Purchase orders, inventory management, forecasting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I hired what I call my head of operations last summer to take that entirely off the plate. This time last year, that was me. I was forecasting our inventory planning. I was placing purchase orders with all of my vendors. I was doing all my research and development. I was doing our whole product development pipeline. And in the past 12 months, I've hired a bunch of separate people to take those pieces on. And what I found for me in particular is it's best to find specialists that can take those little pieces, figure out how to divide up those pieces and hand them to specialists that can just smash it out of the park, instead of trying to cram one full-time hire to take all those things on. So for example, I hired a freelance/agency engineering company, mechanical engineering company. I hired a freelance R&D guy who's developing all my formulations for my cosmetics. I hired a head of operations who's doing my inventory planning. He set up my IMS for me. And then I hired a junior operations guy who works for the head of operations guy. So those are 4 hires I made within the past 12 months to get all that stuff off of my plate. But those are all part-time freelance hires that I made. Not a single one is a full-time hire.
Okay, I actually agree with that. Sometimes I hear people saying oh man, I just need another me. I'm going to hire a COO.
Yeah.
And I'm no, that's going to fail miserably.
And that's how I used to think about a year ago. But I've learned how to break the problems I have down into discrete, not necessarily discrete tasks, but discrete subject matters that I can hand off to a subject matter expert. And the reason I've settled on that approach is because I've done the opposite and it's gone very poorly for me.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of people do that, and I tell them not to, and everyone's no one believes me. They all think that I'm going to make this one magical hire, and they're going to be it's going to be 2 of me, and they're going to solve everything. I don't have to do anything, and that never works. So So it sounds like you've been through that.
Yeah.
What learnings? What convinced the people who are listening to this to not make that same mistake? Because they're not going to believe me.
Well, I wouldn't have believed you a year ago, to be honest.
Exactly.
It's funny you say that. I just wanted to find another me. I'll give you an example. I hired a head of growth last summer that did not work out well for me. And I probably won't be replaced. I haven't replaced him. And I'm going to do with basically what I did is I tried to find somebody that could be a me, but with the growth marketing side of my business. So somebody that could think strategically, have a vision, but then also like really get down in the weeds and actually execute. Not only like the ad buying, but the creative planning, even some of the creative manipulation or creation of the creative, email marketing. Like I was expecting this guy to do a lot. And I was really clear up front. It wasn't like he got on board and was surprised by all I asked him to do. I was really clear up front that like you're a lot is going to be expected of you, and I paid accordingly. It was not a cheap hire, but it just and the reason I thought that would work is because like I'm doing all those things now, plus XYZ, in addition. So like surely somebody can take that off my plate. And to be fair, I wasn't doing all those things. Like I wasn't doing the media buying and some other things, but that didn't work out for me. That guy lasted about 3 months, and I haven't replaced him. And what I'm working on right now, I actually have a new hire who just took over our email marketing and a new agency that's working on our Facebook buying. So anyways, I did the question. Answer to your question is I learned by failure.
So what, because I agree with all that, but what specifically, I'll tell you what I was going to guess after, but where specifically did that new hire fall down? What didn't get done that you expected to get done?
I think the breakdown became there was just simply too much being asked of him. And he, and I've seen this in myself and in other people. When too much is being asked of you, or you're trying to accomplish too much at a time, you just not only like you break down, like it's like brain malfunction. Like you're chasing so many different things. I do this, and I'm trying not to speak poorly about him because I have a lot of respect for him, and I think he's very talented. In case he somehow watches this, but like it was like his brain just like shut down. He was so overwhelmed with all the things that were being asked of him that he couldn't do any of them well.
Did he come from a position where he was running other people, or was he an individual contributor before he joined your company?
It's a great question. In retrospect, I should have paid more attention to the fact that in his previous roles, he managed a bunch of people and agencies, and he didn't do the work himself.
So that's what I was going to guess. So that's the typical profile, right? So like, trying to hire managers and be like, also be the doer. Like, I've never seen work. The other ways worked. So like we have at ShipHero, we've got, a decent sized team, and we have a policy. We have very few policies, but one of them is no glue people. So like if you're like from Office Space where it's like, I move I bring the form from this person to that person. If your whole job is like, oh yeah, I'm between these two people and I hold them together.
I'm a people person.
Yeah, exactly. Like we don't hire those people.
What's interesting, this is a little bit of a kind of detour, but I think one of the benefits of running a software company is that you get to exercise the hiring and the people muscles a lot earlier in your business than somebody like me. So in the early days of my business, all of my money is going towards inventory. Not all, but a significant chunk of it's going towards inventory. And your inventory is people. So like you got to learn things early in your career. And it sounds like you mentioned on the top of the podcast, you used to have maybe an e-commerce store. I didn't know that. So you probably, maybe you have a different experience, or maybe you feel this, innately, but like I am a little bit stunted in my ability to manage, hire, and train people because I had to wait so much longer in my, career starting this company to start doing that. And I'm getting a lot better at it, but I had to make a few mistakes to get there.
So let's get back to the 40 hours a week, 50
Sure.
hours a week. Like break it down. Like what do we do in 50 hours a week?
Yeah. Well, I mean, right now I'm spending all my time. It's funny because what started this do we call this a podcast episode? Whatever.
Conversation.
Conversation is this tweet I made that was kind of, I was kind of like, I like to just say things that get a rise out of people sometimes. And I basically said the 4-hour work week, I think I said is a myth or something. And, what's funny is after that tweet, I connected with a friend of mine who runs an e-commerce brand it's a brand I respect. And he literally showed me a screenshot. He keeps track of the time that he spends. He's got other businesses too. He's in like real estate and he does other things. And he showed me how much he spends on his e-commerce business that I don't know how big it is. It's probably roughly same size of mine, maybe a little bit smaller. He spends like 7 hours a week on it. And there was something about seeing that on a screenshot that really inspired me. So that's a long way of saying, since that tweet, things have changed for me. So I'm still spending a lot of time on my business, but what I'm doing lately is I'm working really hard to design systems and processes and structures that can operate without me being involved with them. So it's taking me a lot of time. I've gotten nowhere in terms of reducing my hours, but I see the end of the tunnel. It's really far away, but I have a vision and a strategy for how to get there, and the people that I've plugged in that I think can get me there. And so you asked me what I spend my time on. Since that tweet, I'm spending all my time figuring out how to reduce the amount of hours I'm working in my business.
So I could tell you that you will never succeed. I'll tell you why.
Why?
It's called Parkinson's Law, which is work expands to fill the time available for its completion.
Unless you artificially constrain the amount of time you're willing to spend on your business.
Yeah, so I have a e-commerce company that does about $5 million a year in revenue, a little less than $1 million a year in profit, and I spend less than 4 hours a week on it. But the only reason why I could do that is because I'm spending all my available time on my other company.
That's true.
So therefore, as the available hours shrank, miraculously, the amount of work that I had to do shrank to fit it. So so I barely have any time now. I've hundreds of employees in ShipHero. I've got 4 employees in my e-commerce company. I spend all my time with the larger company, but yet the work still gets done. The money still comes in. The products are still good. So, so unless you find something else to keep you busy during that time, you're always going to work, right? Because you love what you're passionate about what you do, right? Which brings me to an interesting idea, which is, have you thought about starting a second business, right? So let me give you my theory, right?
Yeah.
And you can tell me why I'm wrong. So I have your product. This is the product.
I love this. Let's do this.
Great product. So here's product shaving. Despite the fact that I have a beard, I do also shave. So it's great. It feels great. Everything from the moment I open the box, presentation, using it, it's all fantastic. But it's also not the world's biggest company, right? Like you're a good sized, profitable company, but you're not like selling for $1 billion, right?
Yep.
So why don't you say, hey, I took this product, I built this from scratch. I learned a lot. I really know how to make e-commerce work, make a direct-to-consumer product. Why don't you start a second company where you create another amazing product that maybe is even bigger? Yeah.
This is the question I ask myself, which is, and I frame it a little bit differently, which is, how much more can this company grow? And what is the best use of my time? Is it investing all of my time into this business? Or, there are a lot of guys that you may, run into on Twitter, like Bill D'Alessandro, who's got,
Element Brands.
Yeah, Element Brands. So he's got 5, 6, 7, I don't know how many brands.
Yep.
They're well into the 8 figures of revenue. You've got like the 4x400 model at CTC. You've got these kind of portfolio of brands. And so the question, and I was actually going to ask you the same thing, is that I asked to them. I actually asked Bill the same question. I don't think he'd mind me sharing this. I said, why do you have so many brands? Why not go super deep on one brand? And his response to me was, your greatest and quickest path to success, if you believe you can get there, is to continue to invest in your brand and grow it. And he believed that for whatever reason, I won't. Anyways, that's what he said. I won't try to interpret why he believes that. But that's the question I asked. It's really, do you believe your company can be bigger? And if so, then why aren't you investing all your time in it? And so where I'm at right now is I believe my company can be a lot bigger. And so that's where I'm putting all my time in, is trying to make it a lot bigger. And so I think the question I'm curious to hear you answer, and I think I know the answer, which is like, why not spend all your time on turning your $5 million business into a $20 million business?
Well, so I don't know if I could have got there. And I thought I could do something else bigger. So I sort of looked at, so our niche is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu apparel.
That's right. I've heard you talk about it before.
So we're probably the biggest in the US in our space, right?
Yeah.
It's a tiny market. We're pretty successful at it. There's not that much, and if we're not the biggest, we're the second biggest, right?
Sure.
Like there's not a ton more we can grow within the space. Now we could go and say, get into become a lifestyle brand. Lots of people have done that. Most of them have failed.
Sure.
Or we can go, let's do another martial art. Let's do another sport. There's plenty of places to go. But I looked at it as the business that I was in. I started when I was 19 as a part-time sort of side hustle thing, right? And it wasn't, here's another way to think of it. The amount of effort that it takes to make ShipHero really successful is not really that different than it took me to build my martial arts business, right?
Mm-hmm.
The value of ShipHero is, I don't know, 100x what the martial arts business is worth, right?
Sure.
Same guy, right? Same person, same effort, same work ethic.
Yeah.
But I picked two things. A, picked the right market, and B, got luckier, right? Like I got lucky in both, but I got luckier in the other one.
But you didn't know that on the front end. It was just a guess.
Right. But I've taken a few swings at things. Like we did, we sold magazine subscriptions for a while, sold nursing scrubs for a while, sold that website. So I'm a big believer in like, you got to get more at bats. So if you think about like a range of like outcomes, like if you start one business, like it doesn't really tell you how good you are, right? Because like you could have hit a home run, you could have hit a single, like you don't really know, like you're so market dependent, right? Versus like take a bunch of swings, you really find out how good you are. And the odds are your first business is not the right one for two reasons. One, just pure odds, right? Most businesses fail. Like what are the odds that the first one you picked is going to be the home run? But the second, you learn so much from the first one, right?
That's good.
It's like, let me do some stuff. So, but the way I looked at it, I think you're in the same boat as me, is I live off that first business, right? Yeah. So it's not like I could just like walk away and like start something new. Like I got kids in school, like, I gotta pay rent. So, but what I did was basically say, how little can I work on the first business?
Yeah.
And how much can I work on the second business? And I was shocked by how much I could just keep cutting. I'll give you a really good example.
That's good.
That because you mentioned like the buying, right? So I did all the buying, and I used to spend so much time. Like I once asked someone else to do the buying, and they gave me back like this really simple, like every item they ordered the same smalls and the same number of 10 smalls, 20 mediums, 40 larges, whatever. And I would look at it and I would go and I would do like a backwards analysis of like, well, what did we sell in the past of similar looking items? Like, I think this is going to sell more to XL. This is more of a women's item, men's. Like I would do all this analysis, right? Spend many, many hours and or a day, right? And then this person just spent like 3 minutes. And I was like, well, I can spend 3 minutes myself. I have you do that. And then so then I'm like, I got to do this. It's the only way it's going to work. What I then found is I have a guy who works for me. His name's Scott. He's been working for me for years. He knows the stuff pretty well. He's not doing the data analysis I was doing. Yeah. He's still estimating it. It's probably pretty close. Is it perfect? No. Was I perfect? No, not either, right? So I'm probably losing a little bit of money by not doing the analysis. But he does it. I don't have to do it. It's off my plate and it's good enough. And I think that's really the secret to taking yourself out of the business is like, if you're going to hold it to the bar of like, it's got to be as good as I want it to be. Forget it. It's never going to happen. But 90% of business could be good enough. Like product can't be good enough. Like that's got to be perfect, right? But how much you buy, like it's just cost you a couple extra bucks. If you bought the wrong thing, you got to close it out. It doesn't make that big a difference. So that's how I found the ability to open a second one. And the second one's way bigger than the first one.
Yeah, that's good. I like that a lot. And I mean, the flip side of that is sometimes you'll hit a home run and find somebody who does it even better than you did it, right? That's the goal. You know, my guy who's doing my forecasting now, 10 times better than I was doing the forecasting. You know, the way he set up my IMS to basically run on its own, just phenomenal. So that's the goal. But at the same time, circling back to what you just said, like, you know, my goal is what you just said, is to get to a point to where I have the flexibility. Optionality and freedom is really the goal, right? And so I want to get to the point to where I have the optionality and the freedom to decide, hey, I've got an extra 20 hours in my week. Do I want to, you know, really go deep in some area of opportunity in my current business or some area of opportunity in a potentially new business? And so, for example, I've had this idea for a Shopify app for a long time that I know would be extremely successful. And like, I would just love to make that app. And so I'm trying to get to the point to where I have the freedom in my schedule to make that app. And I'll be the first customer. My store is going to be the first customer for that app. And, you know, and I just want to learn. I don't know the first thing about software. I don't know the first thing about starting a SaaS company, but like, it really excites me to be able to one of the reasons I want to get my hours down on my current business is not because I don't enjoy it or because I don't believe that it can be a lot bigger. I believe it can be huge. I have 0.0000001% of the shaving market. So there's a lot of room for me to grow. But like, one of the things I enjoy is just building. And so I'm actually excited to like free up more of my time so I can try building some different things, like you said, and maybe have even bigger successes.
Yeah, the way I look at it is, if you took 5 hours off your current job, put 5 hours in a new project, you will get a ton done on the new project in 5 hours. And you'll look back in a couple of months from now, and you won't even be able to remember what corners you cut by cutting those 5 hours, right? And it's the same thing with money. Like, you're going to pull out 20 grand to hire someone to do it. Like, it's going to suck in the moment. At the end of, once it's done, you're going to have forgotten that 20 grand. I would have bought more. Like, it's going to be water under the bridge. And maybe the product won't work because first product, you know, some of them don't work, but you'll still be glad you did it, because you'll come out of it with like, either it worked or like, oh my God, okay, it didn't work, but like, I should have done this, like this. And you'll come out with so many ways to make it better on the next one. It's always worth it. It's like that. You're giving up the lowest value 5 hours of your time to put in the highest value 5 hours of a new project, right?
Yep.
Like the getting started stuff. And you're going to find you could cut like, I don't know, I used to spend time like on all the social channels, like anyone talking about me. And like, now, like on that business, I check the email. Like, I don't even have the email open. I checked it this morning, you know, before 9. I'll check it maybe tonight. Maybe I'll check it again tomorrow. Like, I'll miss an email when like someone will yell at me, like, you didn't follow the ISF, go do it, because I didn't check my email for 12. But like, who cares? It doesn't really matter. You'll find that like, there's so much shit that if you just ignore it, or like you ignore people's emails, like, it doesn't really, like, most of them just don't matter.
So I got to ask, I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but you know, if you got a business that's throwing off $1 million a year, you know, why not go live on the beach? You know, why start a 3PL out of all, you know, and a shipping software out of all things to do?
Well,
you know?
So I think I'm in the same boat as a lot of like sort of our peers, which is, you can't sell it for that much. Like, you can't live off it. You can let it run.
Yeah. $1 million a year, you know, I mean, you can live off of that.
You can definitely live off of it, but it's not going to last forever with no effort. You know what I mean? And then what am I going to do? And also, I mean, I like what I do. So I think everyone's goals are different. Like, some people say they want to like just build something and retire. But the level you need to get to build something and retire is bigger than, you guys might be a little bit ahead of where I am, but you're not at that level where you could sell it and get that big payday yet. You got to be throwing off like couple of $1 million a year in cash to really get that sort of exit you want to get to, right?
Yeah.
So, and the question is, do you just keep hammering away, or can you do both? Because like basically the way the business went, I started ShipHero in 2013. We made probably the most profit we ever made was probably like 2017, 2018, and then like 2019 started to drop off a little bit. So it continued to accelerate even after I stopped working that hard on it.
That's great.
Because you got the momentum. Like a lot of things you're doing, like the product you built, you don't really need to keep. It sort of is the product, right? So if you keep working away at, if you, it's like a good product that people will tell their friends about, and it will grow without you busting your head against the wall. Like it feels like you have to, but the momentum will be there. So you get more out of it than you think.
That's good.
Okay. So your wife works with you. How does that work?
Mm-hmm. No, I love working with her. I know not everybody's fortunate enough to say they enjoy working with their spouse, but we love working together. It's actually been a plus for our marriage. Not only is it, just neutral, but it's been a plus for our marriage and for our business. And, part of the, it's hard to say, why that success is, but part of it is we're very gifted in different ways. So like, we don't really ever step on each other's toes. We control different parts of the business and don't really have any overlap. And, she's really good at what she does and I'm good at what I do. So like, it works well for the business, from a marriage perspective. It's attractive to me that she does so great at her jobs. And I think she would probably say the same. So, helps. And then it's just, it's fun to have, this is interesting, actually a really interesting learning. It was really interesting it was really enjoyable to have something to work on outside of our marriage. Right. And so previously it was always like when we're working on something together, it was either like a project around the house or it was like working on our marriage, which are good things to work on. But like, it was helpful to have like this external thing where we could like solve problems together and like kind of work through interpersonal, differences, but work on them in an external project. And it's kind of hard to explain, but that actually has helped tremendously, in our marriage and just relating with one another and just being two humans that live with each other and, the challenges of being married. So it's been really great. We love it.
Yeah, it's shared purpose there that goes beyond just the norm. So sounds like you're pretty introspective. What have you learned that, sort of through this journey that wasn't obvious in the beginning? Like maybe it's obvious now, but like, what have you taken out of this journey?
This is completely random and maybe obvious to a lot of people, including yourself. But one thing they never teach you in college is like how to build wealth and like the quickest path. It's the most risky path, but the quickest path is through owning assets, right? Most of which is going to be your own business, And I think I didn't really wrap my mind around that until I experienced it firsthand. And not to talk about money or, that sort of thing, but like I make a lot more money than I used to make as an engineer. And my biggest fear before I quit my job was I'm never going to make any money. And like, I'm going to, this is a huge risk and it's a big financial risk. Like that was the biggest thing that I had to get over to quit my previous job and do this full time was the potential for financial loss. And looking back, and I try to convince as many people as I can, like there are lots of ways to make lots of money outside of the 9-to-5 corporate grind, whether it's starting your own e-commerce company or a software company or whatever, your own email newsletter, or there's just so many opportunities to make a living on the internet today outside of the typical corporate grind that has fundamentally changed my life. I love being an entrepreneur and I love working for myself. it's even better when you can work for yourself and actually make good money doing it.
Yeah, I think my daughter will end up making all her money off of sort of some of the content creation that she does as a young teenager. I was writing code when I was a kid, and that passion, really, whatever you like to do as a kid, there's probably a way in the modern era to make money. My dad's a college professor, so he's a PhD biologist, and like he told me that you might make twice as much money if you start your own business, but the only reason why you make twice as much money is because you work twice as hard. And like he legitimately believed that. And then like, at 23, I was making more than him, and he was like, "Okay, well, maybe you got a point, and there's something to this." But like he legitimately believed that. Like a lot of people think that this like starting a business, like they hear these stats, like 90% of businesses fail. It's like I don't think that's really representative. Like that might be like of people that open an LLC, then like 90% of them probably don't do anything with it. But I mean, there's a lot of ways to make money, and you don't have to sort of like go the you don't have to go the corporate route to make a buck. There's just like like you just go ahead and you do something, and like you can start small and you just build something and you sell it online or do a newsletter or create YouTube videos.
Well, it's so easy to underestimate the power of just doing something really well. And like this goes for like blue collar jobs. You don't have to have tech, chops. Like I got a buddy who he was like an accountant or something. He hated his corporate life. And he's like, I want to be a general contractor and I want to start remodeling houses. And now he makes tons more money than he used to make, and he has to turn down jobs. He's been doing it for like 2 years. And the reality is, he does a good job and people talk about him. And like, so people won't stop calling him. And it's amazing how successful you can be when you actually care and you actually do a good job. Like people call you back, because it's amazing how many people don't prioritize like good work. And so the same goes for like plumbing jobs and carpentry and everything. Like,
so why do you think more people don't open their own businesses?
I think they're not educated about how to do it. I think it's scary. It's intimidating. There's risk involved. Like let's be real. There is risk involved. My business could have just as easily gone to zero as it did to where we are. And it's just like intimidating. Like I wasn't raised in a home, and God bless my dad. He worked the grind and took care of us. So this isn't a complaint, but I wasn't raised in a home where I was taught like how to even think about starting a business, or think about like, how do you serve a market? How do you solve a problem that exists out there? Or like, what's funny, when I look back, one of the biggest challenges in my early days before I started my business, or as I was starting my business, was like, where do I go to start an LLC? Who do I call? Like, what kind of paper? Like, it was just this big unknown black box. And looking back, that was the easiest part. Once I figured it out, it was like a few clicks and some paperwork, and I had an LLC. But like the fact, like I've had to get over so many of these hurdles that nobody's really taught how to do. I think that's the biggest challenge. At least if I'm guessing, that's what I would say.
Yeah, one thing that I like to think about, I don't know who to attribute this quote to, but it's something like, people aren't afraid to fail. They're afraid to fail in a different way than everyone else. And I see that everywhere, where like, I see people at a job and it's like, this company's not doing well. And like but it's like, yeah, but we're all going to get laid off. So like, it's sort of not so scary. It's not like it's not scary. It's like, versus like, cause same thing, like I had the business during the financial crisis, 08, 09. And, it was I've told the stories. It was a horrible experience for me. And people reference that as like all these businesses failed. And I was like, yeah, but also all these people got laid off. Like I was able to like save my business. Yeah, it really sucked. But like I was able to like control my own destiny and not go bankrupt. If you worked for a big company and they laid you off, what the hell were you going to do then? It's the same thing. Like you didn't have any more, it wasn't any safer. It just when you're laid off, like everyone else is. So you go through the unemployment like everyone else. But like, so I think the risk of being a little bit different it's just like people are afraid to, I think people are just afraid to explain to their friends and family that like they started a business and failed. Like,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
scary.
that's true. Yeah, that was a fear of mine, like having to tell people like, yeah, I left my corporate job that was paying me well, that, you know, and then I started a razor company of all things, and then I failed, you know, like
Right.
that's a terrifying thing. It shouldn't be. It really shouldn't be, you
It's a
know.
way cooler story than I worked for this company and
It's
then they
way cooler.
outsourced it to China and I got fired and now I'm on unemployment. Like,
Yeah.
you tried some shit and it didn't work
Yeah,
out, you know?
exactly. Yeah, I think people should be more proud of just trying, the fact that they tried, not necessarily whether they succeeded or not.
Yeah. And
So I agree with that.
the best thing about failing in entrepreneurship is like, it really doesn't matter how many failures you have. You just need one success and it counters everything. I've had so many things that I've tried that didn't work. It doesn't matter. You make 100x a lifetime salary with a home run. Who
Yeah.
cares the fact that you had a couple of years where you didn't really get anywhere? Like, yeah, it sucked in the moment.
Yeah.
But
And you learn so much more. Like the learnings I've had from my failures are worth far more than the expensive MBA, you know, I have. So like I would have rather taken that, you know, 80 grand for that MBA and like dumped it in, like in fact, I encourage people this all the time. Like, don't spend 80 grand on an MBA. Like, take that 80 grand and go try to start a company. I guarantee you'll learn a lot more, and you'll potentially have a really a return on your investment.
and I think the same thing for kids. If you're going to spend a lot of money putting your kids through school, and if that's not the route, like college isn't the right route for everyone. If it's not the right route for your kids, like still invest in them. Just invest in their, whether it's getting a trade or starting a business or whatever. Like, it's equally valid. And I think, again, this is like this bias where it's like putting tons of money into your kid's college education is like totally acceptable, but like giving your kid a $50,000 check to start a business seems like, oh my God, like, that's weird. Like,
Yeah.
you're just helping set them up so they can make money, and
Yeah.
more money on your own usually.
Yeah. I wish you said you started your e-commerce at 19. I started at like 29. So like, man, I wish I had started 10 years sooner. I would have fast tracked a lot of the pain I went through.
I was just hustling for beer money, and then I was making more money than I went for computer programming, and then I was like making more money than I was going to make starting salary when I graduated. And I'm like, why would I?
Yeah, that's great.
Why would I get a job that's going to pay me less? So it was a no-brainer.
I love that.
All right, I think it's a good place to stop. I appreciate the time. And then you want to tell everyone where they can follow you, learn more about the product?
Yeah, you can find Supply is the name of my company. I don't know if we even said that. You can find us at supply.co. I have all of our shaving, men's grooming products, and then you can follow me at Sounds Like Canoe on Twitter. Sounds Like Canoe, because that's what my last name sounds like, Coddou. So that's where you find me.
All right, Patrick, thanks a lot.
Thank you.